Dum-de-dum-de-dum. And we are recording. Guess what, folks? It's a Sunday. Yes, it fucking is. Time for a bit of what's up. So, feels like ages since I've done one of these, and it actually is. Yeah, the video that I popped up at the beginning of this week kind of explained the major reason why I've been on and off over the past month and a half. So go and watch that, because it basically covers everything. However, what I will say is, and what I forgot to mention in that video, there was a period of time, about 2 or 3 days, where I had the spectre of the outside possibility of having cancer hanging above my head, with those polyps showing up. But I mean, the doctor did say they figured they were going to be benign because it's happened before and they were benign. And yeah, again, they were benign. But you know, that question mark was still hanging above my head for a couple of days as they were waiting for the biopsy coming in. And yeah, it turns out they were all benign, just polyp-like growths that just suddenly sprang out of nowhere. But yeah, they're all fucking gone now. Thank fuck, they're all fucking gone now. And I'm actually just out from the hospital about 3.5 hours ago today, getting the final check done. The final check, that's how the throat's a bit rough, because the camera was shoved down the throat again, so the throat's feeling a bit rough. But yeah, getting the final check done, and everything's A-OK down there, apart from the normal problems I've got, but there's no more little annoying polyps popping up left, right and centre. But yeah, it's been a rough month and a half. Put it that way, it's been definitely a rough month and a half. A big thanks to all the regular followers, the patrons, the subscribe stars and the YouTube members for sticking with the channel for the past 4.5, well, practically 5 weeks now, coming to think of it. For the past 5 weeks, especially that 3-week stretch where there was no reviews being uploaded. I did try and upload for a couple of weeks, so it wasn't just a full run of nothing. I did try and upload for a couple of weeks when I was feeling a little bit better between the series of operations that were going on, so at least there was some kind of content going up on the channel. So yeah, things are basically back to normal, raring to go again, and I've got a pretty big backlog of reviews to go through again. This always seems to happen. It always seems to happen with whenever I'm in and out of hospital. Because the thing is, you know, when you're going in for operations and stuff, a lot of the time is spent recovering, just in the house, basically recovering, and sitting down for 2, 3, 4 hour stretches after you've had operations done to your stomach, and talking into a camera without looking as if you're in severe pain is a very, very neat trick that I can't do. Right? So it's like, that's why I went, you know what, there's a certain days where I just couldn't even get up out of bed. Certain days where I couldn't even get up out of bed, but the days where I was feeling kind of okay, I did manage to at least get some juice reviews done. But I think some people actually noticed in the eyes there was a little bit of pain still there. I mean, the tramadol took care of most of it, but there's still a little bit of pain still there. Anyway, before we go on to the 2 rather large pieces of vape news going on in the UK, Griz on the previous UK Vape show announced that he is leaving the show. Last Thursday was Sean Griz's last outing as one of the hosts of the UK Vape show. He was there for almost 50 episodes of the show. He's off to concentrate more on his... It's my stomach saying, fuck you, I want to go and sit down again, I want to go and lay down again. That is... he's concentrating more on the Twitch gaming side of things, and he's also wanting to spend more time with the family as well. So all I can say to Griz is good luck. Building a Twitch channel takes a lot of time, because that's what Twitch channels are. They're time sinks. You've got to sink the time in to get the following, to get the followers on Twitch up. I mean, I could... Starfield, classic example. I've ploughed. It's not quite 100. I'm getting fucking close to it though. I think it's like 80 or 90 hours I've ploughed into Starfield so far. I mean, I could easily sit down on a Twitch channel and game, but I can't do it for the 4-5 hour stretches that you're basically supposed to do to get your follow. I can't do that. I can't do that. Having a camera trained on me for 5 hours, and I'd go insane. I would go absolutely insane. So no, I can't do Twitch. I can't do Twitch. Anyway, good luck, Griz. Good luck to you and your new Twitch channel. And yeah, he's already ploughing a lot of time in that Twitch channel, playing odd games that I've never played. But you know, that if you want to, this is the thing about Twitch, if you want to get slightly ahead of the rest, you need to play the games that people aren't playing. Like for instance, about 3/4 of Twitch is currently playing Starfield because that's the new in thing. Griz isn't. He's playing some Ghostbuster. It's not an actual Ghostbuster game. It's called something else, right? But it's a kind of ghost, supernatural type game that he's been spending a lot of time on. And yeah, good luck, Griz. Good luck with the Twitch channel. You're doing something that I just simply can't do. Simply can't do it. Anyway, let's move on to some news, shall we? I just switched the recording off by accident. Honest, I'm not on drugs or anything. It was just a checkup at the hospital. They didn't inject me with morphine or something like that. Anyway, what we're doing here, we're doing that. Lancashire fire crews battle vape dinner lady factory fire in Blackburn. Now here's the thing. Take a look at the front of that factory. See that? The top half of the front facing? The top half of that warehouse literally melted. Now, granted it's corrugated iron. It's got a relatively low melting point, but the fire had to have been intense enough to collapse in the front upper wall of that warehouse. The front upper wall basically started to partially melt and fold in on itself. That's probably why they had 10 fire engines there to put the flames out. Now, Vape Dinner Lady released a statement a couple of days ago saying that operations are going to continue on because the warehouse was not their main production plant. It was basically a storage place, at least the part that went up in flames was a storage place. Well, and it was, what the fuck were they storing in there? I mean, it's not as if PG and VG are highly flammable, and it's not as if food flavourings are highly flammable. And if they had nicotine in there, it's not as if nicotine's highly flammable either. What the fuck were they storing in there for the flames to go up that quick and that intense that it needed 10 fire engines to put the flames out? No doubt there's going to be, it's just like, what's the word for it? What's the word? There's going to be inquiries and investigations. That's the words I was looking for. Honest, I'm not in tramadol, but there's going to be inquiries and investigations, I'm thinking. But 10 fire engines to put out a single warehouse blaze. What the fuck was in that warehouse? That's what I want to know. Because any major constituent ingredient of e-liquid is not inherently highly flammable. It's not. PG, VG, nicotine, food flavourings. They're inherently not highly flammable unless, and this is the way I'm thinking, there was a lot of storage being stored in that storeroom. The 10ml plastic bottles, plastic, highly flammable if subjected to enough heat. The 10ml plastic TPD bottles, the larger short fill gorilla style bottles that Vape Dinner Lady uses, and the holding containers that Vape Dinner Lady was using to ship out e-liquids to the disposable companies that were using VDL liquids. That's a lot of plastic. That is a hell of a lot of plastic, and apparently an onlooker said it was thick black smoke, which means it looked like a plastic base fire. That's what it looked like, a plastic base fire. I'm guessing a lot of the containers that Vape Dinner Lady was using was stored in that warehouse, hence the thick black smoke, hence the very high temperature, high enough to melt the front upper half of that warehouse so it folded in on itself and caused the roof to collapse in. Yeah, it must have been the storage containers. Must have been. It's the only reason the flames would be intense enough to bring down a warehouse of that size. But thankfully, nobody was injured. And yeah, the flames were put out because fucking 10 fire engines. Of course the flames are put out, but yeah, the flames were put out. Vape Dinner Lady has announced saying that their operations are going to continue. All they're basically going to have to do is put in an emergency order. If it does look as if it was the plastic bottles that went up in flames, just put in an emergency order for more plastic bottles. Have the printers run 24/7. And that's them get the labels up. But yeah, it was very interesting. The reports the reports from the eyewitnesses saying it was thick black smoke, and I'm like, well, you know, it must have been the containers. There must have been crates and crates and crates of 10ml plastic TPD bottles inside that warehouse. Just crates and long lines of them as well for that kind of intense flame to start up. Plastic fires are very, very hard to put out once they actually take root. Once they take root, a plastic fire, because it feeds itself, they're very hard to put out. But there we go. Vape Dinner Lady, they're still on the go, folks. They've just lost a lot of plastic bottles basically inside that warehouse. Now we're moving on to what is probably the biggest single piece of vaping news in the UK since the TPD was first enacted back in 2016. The UK government are going to be announcing it. This is according to two different news reports from press officers who know people inside the government. The UK government are going to announce sometime next week, at least that's what one of the newspapers said, their intention to ban single-use vapes. In other words, disposables. Now, there has been a lot of toing and throwing, shall we say. There is the side of the camp that think legislation should have been put in place. Like, in other words, legislate the way out of this. And there is the other side of the camp, which, by the looks of things, at least looking at it from a YouTuber's perspective, you know, people like me that talk about vaping on YouTube, a smaller number of people who are all about the ban. I wanted the ban. I'm going to say it now, I wanted the ban. Now here's the thing. Let's imagine for a minute, right, that next week the UK government is not going to announce a ban. Right, so this time next week I'm going to be on the WhatsApp talking about the government's planned legislation for disposable vaping or single-use vapes. The government has announced a plan for all vape shops to be licensed. £500 a year, you get your vape shop licence from the local council, job's a good one. That's you licensed as a vape shop. And the second part of that new legislative act is the one that takes care of disposables. If you're going to buy a disposable, any single-use vape, you can only buy it from a licensed vape shop. Now that was one of the ideas that I kind of came up with from an idea that John Dunn of UK Via originally kind of came up with about a couple of years ago when all this disposable stuff started happening. So let's imagine for a minute that idea is now in place. And let's imagine that on the 1st of January, all vape shops need to be licensed. And from the 1st of January, the only place you can buy disposables is in a vape shop. Fair enough. So, the general election, the next general election for the UK takes place at the end of 2024, sometime in October or November of 2024. It is guaranteed that the Labour Party are going to get in. There's no fucking way in hell the Tories are getting back in again, after the fuck-ups they've done, right? What are the Labour Party going to be looking at
when they look at the state of vaping at the end of 2024, beginning of 2020, at the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. Now, we need to remember here that the Labour Party, for the most part, are anti-vaping. They have been on record, at least some of them have been on record as saying they want a flavour ban. They want only tobacco and only menthol flavours to be available for vaping in the UK. There is a minority, but it's a vocal minority, who want this outright banned. In other words, all of these big kits, they want them all gone. And they only want, not disposable, they only want the small pod-like devices being sold in the country. Here's the thing, before we get into the scenario that could have happened if legislation actually went down the road of legislating the limited sale of disposables, we need to remember here the Labour Party is anti-vaping. The UK have had it easy. And I think a lot of UK vapers will admit this as well. We've had it easy compared to most of Europe. And the reason we've had it easy is because the Conservative government is in power. They've been in power, consecutive parliament after consecutive parliament, all the way since before the golden age of vaping, through the golden age of vaping, into the current plateau the industry's currently in. It's been a successive run of Conservative governments for more than a decade now. Do you think that luck is going to keep going if Labour get in? No, it's not. I can guarantee you it won't. There is a number of Labour politicians that want the vaping industry curtailed. They want rid of this. So here's the thing. 1st of January 2024. Here's the scenario that's playing out. 1st of January 2024. Vape shops, the legitimate vape shops, go out and get their licence. People like Big D Vapes over in Slaithwaite and Holmfirth, I think his other shop's in. People like Bunny. Vapor Bunny, we all know Vapor Bunny. The 200 odd shops of VPZ, there's a shitload of money in for the coffers there. £500 a shop, damn. The 200 odd shops of VPZ. The 30 odd shops left that Totally Wicked are still running. And the thousands, literally thousands, of independent vape shops up and down the country. They all run out, probably sometime in December, hand over the £500, get their licence, and they put it on the wall. Yay! Everyone says. From the 1st of January 2024, the new legislation put in place the fact that if you are going to buy a disposable, you can only get it from a licensed vape shop. Yay! Everyone says. So we go through January, we go through February, we go through March, we hit spring, April, May. Then we hit summer, June, July, August. What's this? Look at all this! Look at all these disposables littering the high street. What's this? Look at all these big illegal disposables. The fucking 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 puff fuckers that shouldn't be sold here in the UK. They're still littering the high street. What's going on here? Here's the thing. There is already a set of legislative laws that are in place. It's called the TRPR. In the TRPR, it's illegal for tanks over 2 mil to be sold in the UK. You can still buy them. In the TRPR, it's illegal for e-liquids to be over 20 milligram of nic per millilitre. You can still get over 20 milligram of nic per millilitre from the same disposables that are coming across the border into the country. If the current set of legislative laws that were put in place more than half a fucking decade ago cannot be implemented and policed correctly, what the hell makes you think that a set of new laws stacked on top of all that is going to be policed by trading standards and customs and excise? Because I can tell you now, they're just going to ignore them. So by the time the end of 2024 comes around, the same problem that was plaguing the industry of illegal vape devices and vape devices littering the high streets and vape devices setting bin lorries on fire is still going to happen. Why is that, Vic? I'll tell you why. Because the same unscrupulous corner shops are still going to be selling them under the counter. The same unscrupulous vape shops are still going to be selling to underage kids. The same unscrupulous market stall sellers will still have them on their countertop. No legislation can stop the current problem, because now it's too late. If legislation was put in place at the beginning of the disposable rise, trading standards and customs and excise could have had enough time to implement those laws to such an effect that some kind of effect took place, but now it's too late. I live in Ayrshire, North Ayrshire to be exact now. Ayrshire, A-Y-R, Shire, as in Hobbitshire, right? Ayrshire is a large block of county councils on the west coast of Scotland, on the west coast of the Central Belt, right? There's about something like 900,000 people that live in all of Ayrshire, North Ayrshire, South Ayrshire and East Ayrshire combined. Within those three counties, there is very, very large towns. You've got Kilmarnock, you've got Ayr, you've got Irvine, where I am. Very large towns. And in those large towns, there is numerous businesses, not just vape shops. You've got cafes, you've got hardware shops. The kind of shops that you would generally see in a medium-sized town anywhere in the UK. Thousands, tens of thousands of businesses. How many trading standards staff takes care of those tens of thousands of businesses in Ayrshire? Tens of thousands of businesses in Ayrshire. And that's including the hundreds of vape shops. How many staff does trading standards have in Ayrshire? 2. Greater London, including the City of London itself, has a population of 6.7 million, more than the population of Scotland. How many trading standards staff has London got? 4. That's numbers from Trading Standards' own website. Trading Standards is severely underfunded, severely understaffed. And it's not just Trading Standards, it's also the Customs and Excise guys in Stansted and Gatwick. Because it's Stansted and Gatwick that most of these illegal vape devices are coming through. A legislation sitting on top of another set of legislation laws, in other words the TRPR, that hasn't been enforced, hasn't been acted on, is not going to do a fucking thing. If the UK government, Trading Standards and Customs and Excise cannot enact the TRPR, what makes you think they're going to enact a new set of laws on top of that for disposables? They're not. They don't have the manpower, they don't have the funding, and they have got bigger fish to fry. So come 2024, the end of 2024, Labour will win with, let's say, not a landslide, but they win with a 40-seat majority. A comfortable majority for Labour to force through any bills or any laws they want to pass through Parliament. They've got a comfortable majority, not a landslide though. So here's the thing. April of 2025. The back of April of 2025. We're looking at the new tax year now. And this is generally the time when any new government who takes power on the 1st of January, generally speaking, after the general election, they look at the new tax year as the new year in parliamentary terms. The Health Secretary of the Labour government is going to look at the problems that are currently plaguing the vaping industry and pin all of the problems onto disposables. That Health Secretary is going to look at what happened that led up to, through, and the end of that crisis. What led up to it? The lack of policing of the TRPR. What happened through it? The industry not policing itself. What happened at the end of it? The Tory party, the previous party, under advice from industry leaders, under advice from industry insiders decided to enact another set of laws on top of the existing ones that were not being enforced to try and get rid of the disposable problem. What is that health secretary going to think? If that health secretary was worth any salt, he would look at the TRPR and say, that's not being enforced, and the industry itself, for the most part, is ignoring some of it. He would look at or she would look at the second layer of laws for disposables and think, well, rinse and repeat, they're not being enforced either, and large chunks of the industry are ignoring it. Let's ban vaping. Or let's ban flavours. And you can't say it wouldn't happen, because the fact of the matter is the Labour government, at least members of the Labour shadow cabinet, have already said they would support a full flavour ban. In other words, tobacco and menthol only. We've had it easy in the UK over the past decade. We're not going to have it easy come 2025. We're not. Now here's the thing. Through all of this scenario that took place, looking at it from the standpoint of people on YouTube, other reviewers out there in the UK, and looking at it from the standpoint of other vape shop owners out there who wanted legislation put in place to limit and restrict the sales of disposables. You know as well as I know that the TRPR itself cannot be actually enforced. Trading standards and customs and excise are underfunded, understaffed, and they have got bigger fish to fry. Bigger fish to fry. So, what happens with a ban? Well, here's the thing. Now, I don't know if it was UK VIA, because I know UK VIA, John Dunn and the lads, I know UK VIA could have had some kind of input into the decision making that went on in the Department of Health under the Conservative government. I know there must have been some kind of industry insider in there talking with the Department of Health while they were coming up with the theory of either going down the legislative route to enact more laws that would be ignored, or to just outright ban the problem. Here's the thing. Let's say the ban gets enforced on the 1st of January 2024. The next general election takes place in October or November of 2024. That is a good 7-8 month run up until the next general election. If there is still an underlying disposable problem, it will not be as big as the current problem, but there will still be unscrupulous corner shops, unscrupulous market stall owners, and in some cases a very, very small number of unscrupulous vape shop owners still selling those now illegal disposables under the counter. If the Labour Party, who come into power on the 1st of January 2025, sees this going on, still getting complaints from local councils, UK VIA, IBVTA, the NNA and all of the industry founders can do this. Not our problem, Gov. It was banned. It's because of the underfunding of trading standards. It's because of the underfunding of customs and excise. It's because of the underfunding of the checks and balances put in place to stop these illegal devices coming in, that these illegal devices are finding their way onto the street. The industry supports the ban. End of discussion. End of discussion. A reprieve is put in place. The mouth-foaming lunatics that make up the far left wing of the current Labour Party, who are frothing at the mouth wanting a flavour ban, they're now put in check by the industry putting their hands up and saying, we supported the ban. That wouldn't happen if it was legislated out instead of a ban. Because if it was legislated out, the next Labour government can turn round to the industry and say to the entire industry, the Tory party put these laws in place for your industry to police itself. You can't police yourself, you're all getting banned. And there's nothing the NNA, nothing UK VIA and nothing the IBVTA can say to argue that point. Because from a technical standpoint, it would be correct. This is why I support a ban. Simple as that. Simple as that. Too many people, far too many people, YouTube reviewers in the UK included, are too busy looking at the short-term repercussions of what a ban would do. Not a lot of you are looking at the long-term repercussions. What happens when Labour gets in? What happens when the protection that the Tory government put in place with a hands-off approach of the vaping industry is scrapped in favour of Labour's hands-on approach? What happens when Labour decides to ignore what UK VIA says? What happens when Labour decides to ignore what the industry says? What happens when Labour implements a flavour ban? They're waiting for it to happen. Too many of you YouTube reviewers in the UK are ignoring this. Too many of you. This is why I support a ban. Kill the problem dead, drop a nuke on it, and the ashes that are remaining, pour gasoline on it and set the fucker on fire, just to make sure the problem never comes back. And if the problem does come back, the industry can put their hands up. Not our problem. You're underfunding trading standards. You're underfunding customs and excise. Not our problem. Your problem. That would shut the idiot left-wing lunatics, the anti-vaping lunatics in the Labour Party down just like that. Just like that. I still think they will still push for a flavour ban by the end of the next Labour government. So what, they get into power in 2025, 26, 27, 28, 29, 2029. I'm going to say it now, 2029, we'll probably still be looking at a flavour ban being enacted anyway. But at least for now, they cannot use disposables as the excuse to do it. Because the industry itself supported the ban. You've got to look at the long term. You cannot look at the short term. Because it's the long term where you can see what could happen if something was put in place. Does it mean that the unscrupulous under-the-counter corner shops will stop selling the illegal disposables? No. No, it doesn't. Does it mean that a small handful of unscrupulous vape shops will stop selling these disposables? No, it doesn't. The black market will still be there, as the black market has always been in place with these bigger capacity disposables. But because there's now a blanket ban on all single-use vapes, it now means that trading standards will have a much, much easier time finding these on the street being used, asking the person where they were bought, and shutting down the shop. A ban actually makes it easier for trading standards to do their job. That's a fact. That's a fact. So there we go. Yes, I supported the ban, and I fully support this ban actually taking place. I only hope that the announcement next week doesn't add any kind of stupid loophole, and I also hope that the announcement that is being made next week gives at least a 4, maybe 5 month state of grace. In other words, they announce when the ban takes place. In other words, it could take place the 1st of March 2024. That way vape shops up and down the country have got a good 4 or 5 month run to sell off any remaining disposables they've got on the shelf and replace it with something else from the market instead. If they were to go, okay, it's all banned now, that's going to be fucking stupid, because there's fucking hundreds of thousands of these disposables sitting on shelves up and down the country. The government's going to have to give some kind of grace period, a lead into the ban, to make sure that the ones that are still on store shelves can be sold legally, and then those are replaced with something else. But here's the thing, this also gives the likes of Vaporesso, Uwell, Aspire, Geek Vape and all the other pod manufacturers a lead in time to do something that can replace the disposables that are now being banned, not just here in Britain, But over in France as well, France is going down the same road. And we all know that we all know one thing that is very true. France and Germany are the two leading countries of the European Union. When the next TPD is written up, which is probably going to be sometime next year, I think, I would not be surprised if a flat-out ban on disposables is included in the books. It's only a matter of time before Europe as a whole bans single-use disposable vapes as well. It just happens that France and the UK are the first ones to do it. But this run-in, this lead-in time to the ban gives pod manufacturers a chance to hit the reset button on the pod market. What needs to happen now is a concerted effort by UWell, by Vaporesso, by Smok, because they make pods as well sometimes, by all the pod manufacturers to get that big red button and reset it. Reset the pod market back to generation 1. A rechargeable battery and a sealed and locked pod. Non-refillable. Simple to use. Just take the pod out the blister pack, stick it in the battery, and you're good to go. But on top of that, they need to mimic the kind of flavours that were representative in the disposable market. The big problem with a lot of the sealed locked pod kits is they were using 15-20% flavouring. Disposables were using 30-35% flavouring, which is why everyone rushed to them. They were strong, very strong flavours that you could not get in a pod kit. If pod kits are to be relaunched to snap up that middle of the market that we're using disposables, they need to rethink the formulation of the flavourings that they're using inside those locked pod kits. Bring it up to 30% flavouring, strong, punchy, fruity flavours. Put that ice in, watermelon ice, cherry ice, mimic the flavours that the disposable companies are leaving behind. And that way vape shops can now turn round to those former disposable users and say, hey, you know what? We don't sell disposables anymore because the UK government banned them due to problems that were surfacing with littering and with bin lorries catching fire. So here's a sealed locked pod kit. Here's your battery. There's the USB-C charge port. There's a USB-C cable, right? Here's your pod. It's in a blister pack. Like a pill. You basically rip the blister pack open, you get your pod, boop! And that's you ready to go. Even a brand new vapor can understand that. You get your pod, you put your pod in the battery and you suck on it. The people that were making arguments about, disposables have made millions of people give up smoking. Bollocks. Action in Smoking and Health, Ipsos Mori, Gallup, YouGov and Sky polls regularly run public polls that poll the amount of people that are smoking or vaping. This is why Action in Smoking and Health and Ipsos Mori, along with, for that matter, UK Vape, come to think of it, came up with the number of 3.2 to 3.5 million vapers in in the UK. Now that number of 3.2 to 3.5 million is an average polling from all the polls combined. And these polls are ongoing, they're running consecutively, one after another, throughout the entire year. That number has not changed in the better part of 4 years now. Now here's the thing, the argument that some people are making that disposables, millions, no, bollocks. What do you think gave us that number in the first place? 4 years ago, the 3.2 number came up, 3.2 million. Disposables went around 4 years ago, folks. What gave us that number was legitimate vape shops giving assistance to smokers and selling them an Aspire Zelos kit, selling them a mouth-to-lung Vaporesso kit. Yes, in some cases selling them a pod kit. Who's buying the disposables? People that used to buy kits like this. Your stock coil sub-ohm tank users. Why do you think the middle of the market died a death over the past 2 years. It used to be the case that Smok and Vaporesso released a single battery or dual battery kit twice a month. It used to be the case that Geek Vape released a dual or single battery kit once a month. It used to be the case that Aspire released a pen-like starter kit or a good direct-to-lung kit, single or dual battery, usually once every 2 months. Where did the middle of the market go? Why did they stop producing them? Because the people that used to use these, they all went to disposables. That's why. It's got fuck all to do with disposables helping smokers give up smoking. It's got fuck all to do with it. The bulk of these disposables were being used by the people that used to purchase dual battery stock coil sub-ohm tank kits. That's why the middle of the market died in the UK. That's why the advanced vaping market is nowhere to be seen. But here's the thing. And I have got a feeling some of these companies knew that this ban was going to happen. Smok have not done this for fucking years now. Single battery, dual battery kit, both being released consecutively. Word came out that Vaporesso have now, or are going to release, a dual battery box mod called the Armour. There is rumours going around that Geek Vape are finally pulling their finger out the rear end and they're hitting the reset button on the Griffin RTA line. Middle of the market, folks. The advanced vapors. It's the advanced vapors in their millions, literally, that have switched over to the disposable kits. And the reason they did it was simple, ease of use. That's the reason they did it. Now, what kind of impact is this going to have on the industry as a whole? The whole of the UK now being blanket banned to do with disposables. But the first thing, you've just seen it. And Vaporesso's just announced it. You're going to see the rise of the single and dual coil, stock coil, sub-ohm tank kits again. It's going to take about 6 or 7 months for it to kick in. You're probably not going to start really noticing it until halfway through next year, but it's going to happen. Because the disposable market sucked up the centre core of what used to be the advanced device market. And it's led to a lot of vape shops up and down the country essentially being put on their knees because they were basically forced into the disposable market. And if the entire industry up and down the country is forced into the very same market, they're basically trying to undercut themselves within the same towns to get more custom in. The markup on disposables is not as big as people think the markup is. A lot of that markup profit is basically snapped up by the dealers and the middlemen before the device actually hits the vape shop itself. Now, there is going to be a transition period of at least 3 months if the UK government ends up announcing the ban, or when the ban takes place next week, or this week coming. And if they announce the ban's going to be, let's say for argument's sake, 1st of March 2024, that transition period, that 4 or 5 month gap between the ban being announced and the ban taking place, is going to be a bumpy road. It's going to be a bumpy road because the stock of disposables is eventually going to stop. And what vape shops bring in to plug that gap, it's going to have to be pod kits. It's going to have to be pod kits. And again, as I said before, if Vaporesso, if Geek Vape, if Smok had the right idea, they would come up with a Generation 1 pod kit, locked and sealed pod. Don't need to refill it. All you need to do is recharge the battery. They would come up with a Generation 1 pod that had flavours that mimic those disposables. If they had any business sense, that's what they should do. Come up with a rechargeable pod kit that had flavours that mimicked those disposables. It would be an instant hit. Fucking instant hit. Instant hit. And with what is essentially the hard reboot of the vaping industry taking place after disposables get banned, It essentially means that by the end of 2024, when the Labour Party come into power, they will not have a leg to stand on by blaming the problems on the industry itself. Because by the time they come into power, that ban's been in place for months now. The vaping industry can put their hands up, all in unison, and say, not our problem. It's because everything else is underfunded. Yeah. That's why I supported the ban, people. You've got to look at the bigger picture. You've got to look at the bigger picture. If there was any kind of door left open for the hard left, frothing at the mouth, anti-vaping lunatics of the Labour Party to shut down the vaping industry, that door would have been the disposable market. That door's now closed. It's now closed, and this will probably be the final action that the Conservative Party take on the vaping industry, because they're not going to be in power by the end of next year. They're simply not. They're not going to win the election. And if they do, it's going to be very fucking suspicious, right? They're not going to win the next election. They're simply not. So, what it now means is we have to sit back and wait for the announcement taking place next week to see when this ban actually takes place. It's going to be a very interesting week coming up. It really is. Anyway, that is it from me, folks. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.